Republican strategist Captain Armen Kurdian and Democratic strategist David Katz are here with me right now. And Armen, I'm going to start with you, or I feel like I should be calling you Captain. In terms of the Electoral College, following this week, this rocky week we've had, are we seeing the red wave Republicans had hoped for in 2020 manifesting now?
Well, good afternoon, Adrienne. So it's entirely possible, although like I warned back in 2022, if Republicans don't throw in the big rocks into the pond, you're not going to go out and get a wave. Democrats did a great job in 2022 of getting their vote out, getting their base out. So it's entirely possible. Now, when you look at the national polls for President Trump over Biden, he's got about a 5-point lead. It is swayed somewhat by the massive amount of Democrat voters in the state of California and state of New York. For example, in 2020, when Biden had more than 7 million popular votes than Donald Trump, 5 million of those came from California. To your point, most of the polls I've seen actually show Donald Trump with a fairly sizable lead, somewhat outside the margin of error in those swing states. Many of them are in the Rust Belt. And that is a big reason why I believe he brought J.D. Vance onto the ticket, because he really connected with those voters at that level of at that level of the ticket. They're working class Americans, blue collar union guys. And you can just sway over just a couple of percent of those to Donald Trump's favor, and it's game over.
Yeah, a lot of political pundits and people who are in the know are talking about the message of unity and the RNC and what's happened over the past week. But we can't forget about the talking points here, whether it's gender education in schools and puberty blockers for children, or it's the immigration crisis. But David, President Biden is in a conundrum right now. And there are reports that people are very concerned, obviously, but he is very upset at what looks like betrayal, those Democrats who have been actually saying that he should step down. But you can't silently ignore anymore, which is what it seems as many of the people in his party have done when it comes to his mental and physical capacity. Now he has COVID. So what did Democrats do?
Well, he had that debate, which, of course, was a debacle. His advisors shouldn't have sent him into that debate. He would have had a lot of reasons to say, I'm not going to stand on the stage with a felon, let Trump go argue with the prosecutors who are trying to put him in jail. I don't have time to argue with him. I'm the leader of the free world. But he didn't take that tack. He didn't look good during the debate. Now he's trying to, hang on. I think ultimately, if Democrats stand united, and they will, behind whoever the candidate is, I think that they'll do very well. This is a moment of Republican unity. There'll be a lot of Democratic unity when the candidate, steps forward against Trump and Vance. And that may not be Biden. It may be Kamala Harris. I think the people who are pessimistic about her are forgetting the fact that she was a prosecutor. She's a person of color. She ran very well with people who were not of color when she ran in California. She always trounced her opposition in California. Again, she was a prosecutor. She went to a public law school. I think that she can, she went to the University of California, as I did. And I think that it'll all come together for her if she's the candidate. They're talking about an open convention. I don't think that would be a disaster. I think it would spark a whole lot of interest. Everyone will take a pledge that they'll support the ultimate candidate. No one's going to walk out. No one's going to be petulant. It'll be clear that they're just enablers of Trump and Vance if they're petulant, or if they, go home and, take their marbles and go home. So I think it'll either be Biden. I think that's a possibility. I think if you're betting, more likely it's Kamala Harris. And there's also a strong bet that it will be an open convention and someone like, let's say, Whitmer and Shapiro will come out of it. But whatever it is, I think Democrats will be united because they've seen this show before. They've seen the Trump show before. It was a disaster. He did terribly. And let's face it, he'd even be worse this time because he won't have people like General Kelly and some of the others who blocked him from following his worst instincts. This time, he'll be all Project 2025, get rid of the civil service and try to punish his enemies. Who wants 4 years of that?
Captain Armen, I hear you chiming in there.
Yeah, I think he's learned quite a bit from his previous 4 years. And this 4 years, I think, are going to be quite different. That sense of unity really is focused on the Republican base having come together, realizing that this is there is a major conflict in ideology, and that the Democratic Party continues to move further and further to the left, and that is just outside of mainstream America.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your television provider, and don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.